Well, it is the 29th day of March 2017. Kenyans eagerly awaiting for the budget of the year 2017-2018 to be read in the afternoon. My name is Akisa Wandera. Our sign language interpreter is Meresha Owiti. We will be linking up with our reporter Abi Agina, who's live from Parliament as we anticipate the reading of that particular budget. He will be speaking to a number of leaders there. He has been speaking to a number of leaders since morning to get their perspective about the performance in the last budget and some of the things we expect. Of course, we will be going down to the county levels with Rashid Ronald in Kisumu, Elvis Kosgei in Eldoret, as well as for the Juakali sector, we will be speaking to Timothy Otieno. All this lands are for you here on KTN News Desk. Let's first take a look at the highlights. Good afternoon. The National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich will this afternoon deliver this year's budget, and the government is set to spend about 2.6 trillion shillings in 2017-2018 financial year. Our reporter Abi Agina is currently in Parliament and now joins us live with the updates. Good afternoon, Abi. You have been in Parliament since morning speaking to a number of leaders. What exactly do they expect?
Well, many thanks, Akisa. Indeed, it's more of a low-key event today. We are seeing members of parliament still streaming in ahead of the budget reading at 2 p.m. And majority of them are quite optimistic that this time round the budget will not have new taxes to Kenyans, where we've had a number of Kenyans complaining, saying that the cost of living has been going up, Akisa. And other than that, we do expect to hear from the CS for the National Treasury, that is Henry Rotich, on some of the other areas he will actually be considering to raise the deficit, which stands at about 300 billion shillings, Akisa. So really, that's basically what's been happening at this hour. And I have with me the senator for Nyamira, that is Senator Ken Mungare, who we want to just quickly get his perspectives on what to expect on the budget, even as the country waits for the budget reading at 2 p.m. And many thanks, Senator, for joining us live on KTN News Desk. And perhaps what is your main expectation today as the budget reading is about to start at 2 p.m.?
Good afternoon. This is a normal ritual in a budget cycle, though this time it was shortened by virtue of the fact that we are going to elections in August. Mm-hmm. What I expect from this budget is a miracle from the CS, Mr. Rotich, on how he is going to fill in the gaps, considering that the growth of the economy is below averagely 5%.
All right.
So unless they are going to do a lot of huge borrowings from, or they are going to persuade through the budget, the lenders. Mm-hmm. But for the common man, the best things we expect this regime to tell Kenyans, how can Kenyans get water? How can Kenyans get almost 60% who don't get a meal a day, get their meal?
All right.
I'm talking about the basic needs, which needs to be factored heavily, though it might be a political gimmick. Yeah. So those are the challenges. The rest of the things you've been told is that they have not even accounted fully on the Eurobond, which was borrowed.
All right. And of course, this budget is quite critical in terms of we are going into an election come the August, and many of the legislators I've been able to speak to, they want to hear how much will be allocated towards IEBC and, of course, issues to do with the infrastructure component in the budget.
The budget allocation for IEBC is non-negotiable. For a free, credible and fair elections, IEBC requires about 40 billion. They need to get that money. You know, there are shortfalls in IEBC. There is a lot of problems in terms of technological preparedness.
All right.
We don't want an excuse that they never had the money, though we are running out of time on that. So that one, the government has no option. All right. They must give to the IEBC what they require for a preparation for free and fair elections.
Senator, I know you're also one of the presidential candidates, and what is in your wish list as the budget is tabled this afternoon?
I've just said that when I take over from August, I'll be giving Kenyans water, a meal a day, and medical care. Those are issues, basic needs. Yeah. You've heard the Jubilee regime talking about the roads, but I've never seen the president and his entourage ride on those roads. I expect when they're going to talk about allocation of infrastructure, which really has huge funding, I expect one of the days the president is in charge to ride on those roads.
All right.
Yeah.
And of course, Kenyans have been up in arms of the cost of living, the cost of food. And do you think the government has been quite sensitive to the needs of Kenyans, especially when it comes to cutting down on taxes and also ensuring people are well paid who are in civil service?
On political rhetoric, the Jubilee regime has succeeded. On dealing with issues affecting the common man,
All right.
They have totally failed. Yeah.
Perfect place to end the conversation. Senator Ken Wangare there, Akisa, talking to us as we prepare for the budget statement expected at 2 p.m. It is a 2.62 trillion shilling budget, Akisa, and this is the largest in Kenya's economic history. How will the government be funding this budget that has a deficit of about 300 billion shillings? We'll be getting the answers from the CS himself, that is Henry Rotich, later on from now, but at the moment, Akisa, we want to cross over back to you for more news.
Sure, for that, but even as we talk about the national budget, for the past 4 years, Kenyans have been dealing with a new concept that is devolution. How well do they spend their money? What kind of budgetary constraints do they have? And Peter Wakaba now joins us in studio with a conversation on budget and devolution. Peter, good afternoon. I hand it to you.
Well, indeed, good afternoon there, Akisa Wandera, looking very good this afternoon. And indeed, the conversation around budgeting and devolution is indeed one that, well, has hit different notes depending on who you ask. And the fact of the matter is that this was essentially an experiment that started about, well, 4 or 5 years ago and has taken various directions depending on county and depending on exactly who you are talking to. With me to take apart that conversation, again, I have with me Rajesh Shah. He is a senior tax partner at PwC, a man with vast experience in matters finance, matters taxation, and indeed matters budget. And again with us is Lydia Dirango. She is a senior manager at Ernst & Young, that is EY. And they're here to give us deeper insights into just what to expect this afternoon and, of course, what the measures that will be put out in that budget do mean for you there as our viewer. Karibuni sana.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Rajesh. The fact of the matter is that it hasn't been very long since we started talking about devolution and dealing with a devolved budget that tries to send some money to the grassroots. Do you think this experiment has had any reasonable measure of success?
Peter, I think obviously it depends on which side you're looking at it from. I think it's a journey which we as a country are going through, and it's still early days. I think if you recall, when the counties were set up, it was sort of 4 or 5 years ago now, time again to elect the new people again. So the real, we started as a country with devolution, and it will take time for it to settle down, get its own roots and everything. So it's too early to say as an experiment as it failed or succeeded, because it's not really 4 years of experimentation, you might say, but it's not really. I think if you look at it, there is a commitment from national government plus the county governments to say what should be spent where. I think we're still into a transition phase of moving things from sort of in the center or the national level into at the county level and devolve responsibility and accountability. With that also comes, how do we get the money to spend on the things we are responsible for? So it's still early in the journey to actually say, is it working or not working?
Lydia, I want to bring you into this conversation, and the fact of the matter has been that when we started this devolution conversation, absorption of funds that have been given to the counties, capacity at the counties to be able to implement projects, indeed revenue generation at the counties has always been an issue. How far along do you think we are with dealing with these challenges?
The challenge is still there, because when you look at how the counties have generated their own revenue, this is from their own source revenue, and that one will come from the rates, the business permits, and either there's a problem with how they do their projection or the collection mechanism, because you'll see is that they collected around 64% from their own source revenue. So meaning in terms of the deficit that they have, is still a huge deficit for them. And then when it comes to the absorption rate, what you'll see is that the recurrent and even the wage bill for the county is what took a big chunk, because for them, for the county level, their wage bill percentage was at 40%.
Yes.
And this is against the trend, the international trend, which is supposed to be below 35%. So for the wage bill, fine, we understand right now is the time for recruitment and building the capacity, but they can do more in terms of controlling that wage bill so that now they deploy more funds for development. And what you'll find is that for development, 30% is what was supposed to be allocated.
Yes.
And only 8 counties met the threshold of actually the 30% for development. All the other counties fell short. So they need to have a purposed approach in terms of meeting the development needs for the different counties. Yeah.
Rajesh, coming back to you, again, 2.6 trillion, really ambitious budget. The most ambitious budget ever in this country. A lot of key capital projects that are meant to create benefits that then accrue to people across the country, in the counties, here at the center in Nairobi and that sort of thing. Do you think we have chosen the right priorities? Will these benefits accrue as planned? And are we getting value for money, in your opinion?
I think big infrastructure products, obviously the one which comes to mind is the standard gauge railway.
Yes.
I think that's nearly completion in terms of its phase 1, and that will be the test now for us as a country, that having invested in this huge infrastructure project, are we going to get the benefits? So I think let's actually use that as an example to see whether, yes, we're doing the right thing as a country.
Yes.
And normally, if we look back, obviously, when the original rail was built, that stimulated economic activity along the rail lines and everything. Hopefully, there's a similar expectation. And it might just happen. And once that happens, it will create certainly that multiplier effect, which will spur into more activity and create the things which we as a country need, which is really around employment. Yeah, because that is the critical need for us as a country, to direct more economic activity, which will then result into employing more people. Because the biggest challenge we have as a country is what can we do to create employment opportunities or business opportunities for our people.
In the conversation we had earlier on, Lydia, one of the things we touched on was the deficit, and the fact that this is also the biggest one ever. The government has been really ambitious in terms of saying that they will try to sort of be able to bridge this in one way or the other. What are the things that you think are key in enabling us try to, well, collect as much revenue as possible and be able to bridge that deficit?
When it comes to trying to bridge the deficit, the sources of revenue are usually either they get it from taxes or appropriation in aid. And what you'll see is that in this budget, the theme that is going around is that no more increase in taxes. So what is going to happen is expanding the tax base. That means that the people who are not in the tax bracket, they be brought, they contribute to the national pie. And what you'll see is that it's more of compliance that is going to be geared towards. So we expect at least an allocation to the Kenya Revenue Authority to give them more ability to actually collect. And what you'll see is that there are deliberate measures being done. And for all government projects, you have to be integrated into IFMIS, and which is also linked to the KRA, so that now all the people who are getting government tenders, they indirectly have to pay taxes because they're already in the radar. And also it brings back the discussion of the informal sector and also looking at the untaxed wealthy individuals.
Okay, indeed, insightful conversation right there. Thank you both for taking the time. Keeping it short and sweet, because this is indeed a brief bulletin for us, but and then just to remind our viewers that the conversation around the budget continues about, 1 hour, 46 minutes and 50 seconds to go to 3 o'clock, when the budget statement is expected to be tabled and read in Parliament. And my very able panel and several other guests will be standing by to bring us additional insight into this as we do go on in this afternoon and on the subsequent bulletins. Now I want to throw you back to my colleague Akisa, who is standing by with more news here in studio, and indeed to bring us up to speed on what just the other headlines of the day are. Akisa.
All right, Peter, thank you very much for that. Of course, all eyes are awaiting the hour when that particular announcement or that reading of the budget 2017-2018 will be read. But let's now get into other things. The Orange Democratic Movement has announced it will conduct party nominations between April the 7th and the 23rd of April. According to the party's National Elections Board, only valid members of the party will take part in the exercise. The party further says it will notify the police of areas designated as polling centers in order for them to provide security.
We had an incident that occurred in Homa Bay, and this touches on acts of violence and misconduct that we are warning our aspirants, we are warning our supporters that we will not condone any acts of violence or misconduct. Each one of these aspirants have signed a code of conduct. And because of this, we have had an issue that was investigated that concerns violence that occurred in Homa Bay. Yesterday, a report was presented to the Central Committee, and the same was adopted. We are going to communicate to those who are involved in that mess, and we have come out with disciplinary measures against those that were found to have been culpable during that Homa Bay incident.
The logistics are already in place, and we expect no hitches, having learned from previous elections and nominations that we have conducted. However, we have received intelligence reports of certain areas where there's build-up by some people to cause disruptions or acts of violence.
Now, there was confusion at the committee meeting probing National Lands Commission Chairperson Mohammed Swazuri. This was after Swazuri allegedly served the National Lands Commission CEO with court orders directing him not to attend the meeting to testify. Let's now speak to our senior reporter, Patrick Amimo, who's joining us from Parliament with more details about what exactly happened in that committee meeting today. Patrick, it seems that there was a very interesting conversations going on in that committee today.
Thank you, Akisa. Yesterday, we saw the chairperson of the National Land Commission, Mohammed Swazuri, try to tell the committee that he had gone to court and obtained orders stopping the committee from hearing this petition that wants him removed from office. That attempt yesterday was thwarted because he could not he could not serve his court orders. And today, when the chief executive officer of the National Land Commission, Tom Chavangi, appeared before the committee for the hearings, he did indicate, he told the committee that he had received orders from Swazuri that he should not appear before the committee because of the court order. But the committee chairperson, Alex Muiru, together with the members, said that they have not been served. The committee will continue with its hearings. He also says that the Speaker of the National Assembly has not been served, neither has the Clerk of the National Assembly been served. The petitioner, Mugo Njeru, also says he's not been served by the so-called court orders that were obtained by Mohammed Swazuri from court yesterday. So the hearings continued, and we had the Chief Executive Officer, Tom Chavangi, testify before the committee on what he knows about this particular scandal that has emerged over compensation money with regard to the standard gauge railway. And also the Director of Finance, Mr. Francis Mugo, also testified before the committee on the goings-on with regard to those compensation payments. While making his submissions, the CEO, Mr. Chavangi, said that he was not aware of the letter that did authorize the payments to Dasahe Investments Limited. This was to be about 43.3 million shillings. This letter was allegedly written by Chairperson Mohammed Swazuri, directing the Director of Finance to pay Dasahe Investments Limited. But from the petitioner Mugo Njeru, he says that when they discovered this scheme, they had to rush to court to stop the process of payment, which matter was withheld. And then decided the 43.3 million shillings could not go through. But the Director of Finance said that with regard to another amount of money on this disputed piece of parcel, that is that money that was paid to Bakresa Grain Millers Kenya Limited, money amounting to 82.8 million shillings. He's confirmed that that money was paid to the miller in Bakresa, who is in Mombasa. So the Commission is still ongoing with these proceedings, and we expect later in the afternoon to have the Director of Legal Affairs to appear before the committee and also shed more light on what he knows about these transactions and compensation claims at the Commission. Akisa.
All right, Patrick, thank you very much for that update. Patrick Amimo, our senior parliamentary reporter, joining us from Parliament as he follows through that story of the probing and the quest for ousting National Lands Commission Chairperson Mohammed Swazuri. Let's now take a short commercial break. Don't go too far. We still have a lot lined up for you here on KTN News Desk.